Hey, what is up? It's Jim. I'm back with another Tiller tip. And this week we're talking about depression. Now, that's not a fun topic to talk about, but it's pretty important. And I can't believe I haven't talked about it more here on Tiller Tips. I talk about it in coaching quite a bit because you see, it's part of my story. Depression is something I have really struggled with in my life. And 6.5 years ago, I checked myself into a 30-day residential treatment center down in Florida, a joint called Honey Lake. And it was the scariest thing I've ever done in my entire life. But probably one of the best things I've ever done. They taught me so much. They helped me in incredible ways. I learned a lot of tools and tips and tactics, stuff that I use quite a bit in coaching. But beyond that, they also did a DNA test to measure my genes versus psychotropic drugs. And frankly, I was on a medication that just was not good for me. We all have a different genetic makeup, and therefore, these different medications can interact differently in me than it can for you. And so, this drug that didn't work for me might work for you, but just these DNA tests are amazing that they can limit, trial and error. And I just think that's important for people to know, but that's not really what I want to talk about. You see, Honey Lake has been on my mind lately quite a bit because one of my friends is currently down there. He's maybe a little over halfway through his stint in this treatment center, and he's really struggling. It's been really hard. Honey Lake is not a fun place at all. But one of the things I was thinking about and reflecting about while I was there was about this this concept that we have this thing called the HPA axis. It's the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenaline gland. And when we experience some kind of, danger, our HPA axis does this chain of events that produces, a chemical, then another chemical, and then our adrenaline kicks in, and, we find ourselves in this place needing to fight, to flee, or to freeze. So, one of those three options our body is going to choose. And, I think of a story about a man, I think up in like Fort Collins, who was running along a trail just outside of town. And he came along, turned a corner, and there was a mountain lion there. And his body did this HPA axis thing, the hypothalamus activated, the pituitary gland activated, the adrenaline gland activated. It all happened very naturally, and this is a good example of the HPA axis getting snapping into action. And then his body had to choose: is he going to fight? Is he going to flee? Or is he going to freeze? And if he would have frozen, maybe that would have been, a good idea. I don't know. They say with bears, I think, that you should play dead. And so like freezing might be a really good tactic for a bear, but that's not what his body chose. What if he would have fled? He could have turned around and ran back down the trail. Maybe, gotten, the cat probably would have chased him. This mountain lion would have come after him, but maybe he had enough of a head start and could like turn another corner where maybe there's cars and buses and, cyclists or whatever. And the cat might have gotten spooked, like, oh, I'm out of my element. But that's not what his body chose. His body chose to fight. And so he kind of ruffled up, and the cat's like, yeah, let's go. And this mountain lion pounced on him, and he grabbed it by the neck and choked this cat out. Like, how crazy is that? His body chose to fight, and it actually was a good choice. He was obviously, scratched up, but he survived, and that worked out. That's a really remarkable story, right? And, the point isn't like fighting is the best thing to do. But our body needs to be free to choose. And, I think our instincts often kick in to choose, something that is very situationally appropriate. And so for this man, fighting was, the good and right option. His body chose well. Well, when I learned about this HPA axis stuff, I began to realize what was going on with me, because in my depression, my HPA axis was just going nuts all the time about really stupid, insignificant things. Like I could, knock over, a cup of water and, nothing broke. There's like 4 fluid ounces that went on the table, didn't damage anything, easily wiped up. But this would happen and I would just be like, oh my gosh, like it would be like a mountain lion was attacking me. Like my HPA axis was just absolutely triggered all the time, constantly over stupid things. And my body just was not free to choose. My body would constantly choose to freeze. I was freezing all the time. I was working for a church at the time, and we were a quickly growing church, and we were just a lot was happening. We were setting up and tearing down every Sunday in a high school. And, I can't believe how long I got to, fake it before I could make it. But I was freezing all the time over insignificant things that should have never tripped my HPA axis. But depression can do that. It can, just create such a heightened sense. And, for my buddy, I think that's part of his narrative, that his HPA axis has probably been triggered and he probably hasn't been free to choose the good and right response, the fight, the flight, or the freeze. And I don't know that he's chosen freezing all the time. It's not necessarily that, but I don't know. I don't know if you're experiencing that right now, if you've ever experienced that, but that should have been a really good warning sign that I was struggling with depression. And I just share that because I think that's really good for all of us to keep in mind, for ourselves, for our family members, for our friends, our neighbors, people around us. If it seems like they are having, this autonomic response all the time, that their HPA axis is getting triggered and they're not choosing multiple different, responses, that might be a great warning sign that there's something wrong. So, if you identify with that and you're like, oh my gosh, I might be really struggling with depression. I think the same thing probably happens with anxiety. Please don't go it alone. Cry out, and, I'd love to help you. Tiller coaching exists to help people who are suffering in the expectation gap. And this whole, HPA axis thing definitely was an expectation gap for myself. It was happening all the time. And I wish I would have had the courage to speak up, but maybe you could have the courage. So that's what I have. I'm praying for my buddy down in Florida. I'm praying for other people that I know maybe need to have a courageous step like that. But it all starts with just crying out a little bit. And I'm proud of him for doing that to begin with and allowing himself to do this scary step. So yeah, if I can help in any way, let me know. Appreciate you checking these out. And if you know someone that might be struggling with this, please share this message. Once again, longer than I wanted it to be, but it's an important narrative, and I'm glad I got to share it with you today. So, all right, I hope to see you next time. I'll see you then. Bye.